Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, former NHL player Tom Laidlaw, who played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And we're the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And Tom, we had talked about the big injury that the Columbus Blue Jackets experienced when Korpisalo went down with an injury. He had played well for them this season. And the big question is, how would Elvis Merzlikins step in? This is a guy that they were very high on coming into the season, but he hadn't performed well. But last night he comes in, big game against Sergei Bobrovsky, the Florida Panthers, coming back to Columbus, and he beats them, 36 saves, big win. What's your take on Elvis and whether or not he can get the job done with Korpisalo out of the lineup?
Well, first of all, I liked it when we decided we were going to talk about him today. I went and watched the video of him getting interviewed, talking to the reporters about how I thought he was very polite and respectful with the reporters, asking that they just leave him alone. He wasn't going to talk to them anymore. He was going to concentrate on getting in the goalie world, I think he called it. And it struck me that like here's this young kid who really hasn't done much yet. He had this confidence to make that statement instead of just on his own saying, I'm just not going to talk to reporters. He was very, like I said, polite and respectful, and talked to the reporters and told them how he felt. Doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to go, but I love the confidence that he showed off the ice, and it showed in the game too. I just thought he played a real confident game. And the one thing about Tortorella, he apologized for his comments the other night there, said he was undisciplined what he said. But I also think, he gets, like we talked about, he gets the fire under his team. It's that us against the world mentality, and even more so now losing Korpisalo and another young guy coming in. So who knows how long it lasts, but he showed that he certainly has the confidence and the abilities to get it done, at least short term.
Well, and we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Elvis was a star in Europe. I mean, he was viewed as the best goalie not in the NHL. He was a dominant performer, and then he came over here, and it didn't go well in the first few starts, and that can undermine confidence, as we all know. But I think this team, if he can step up, when you look at their goals against, they're among the best teams in the league. Like they're, I think, ranked 7th in goals against in terms of lowest goals against average, and that's the sort of, I think, statistic that can carry you. Now, they're not in a playoff spot, and they're looking up. I think they got to make up 4 or 5, points, maybe even 6. But how many is it? 5?
5 points, yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I think it's still within their grasp.
Yep.
And when you're playing that way, like I think this is a team. Like I'm never a person that believes that you got to make a move to get ready for the playoffs. I think if it makes sense, you do it. I think the players like it when you bring someone in. It shows you have confidence in their ability. But I think Columbus could benefit by going out and maybe getting in the mix and try to get a score. Huffman, perhaps from Florida, or I don't know, maybe the Kreider sweepstakes. But they're so good defensively. And I think it would be worth it for them. And, when you look at what they did last year, they pushed all in. I think you got to continue to go all in. This is a team that I think the fans could get behind. And because of the way that Tortorella commands that team, and they're hard to play against, who knows if they get in the postseason. So I thought that was an important win for Elvis and probably for the team.
It was. And I think for all those reasons you stated, and I said, I really believe that although Tortorella said he was undisciplined in his comments the other night after that loss in overtime, I think it's really that is his mentality with the team. It's us against the world. And that's the way he portrayed himself that night too. Listen, I like the team, and it's a great question about you. Do you go out and get some goal scoring? My concern is if you go out and just get one guy, is that really going to make a difference in that lineup, right? I just, is it, or do you just say to yourself, listen, this is what we are. We're this grinded out team. And do we say more, well, let's go get some more, second, third line guys that can really make a difference as opposed to those top end guys, and just say, listen, we are not going to win games 7-4. We're going to win games 2-1. And let's just really, strengthen that mentality. I just don't know if they got enough offensively that one, maybe even two guys really make that much of a difference offensively for them.
Well, I think it's a fair point, but if you bring in one guy, sometimes it can affect two lines. I mean, we've seen that before where you slot a guy in, another guy moves down, second line gets better. So I think it's worth a shot depending on what the price is. Like, I don't think they can be in a position to keep giving up first round draft picks and not have an impact, long term on this. But they're an interesting team. And you said the other day, and I think you were right on this, is that Tortorella. It's not always a case of him losing control. Like you said, he's undisciplined, but I think he knew what he was doing, just as you did, and trying to light a fire under his team. And I think it worked. And another game last night, and you had sent a message because I think you wanted to talk about this, and I think it's an important issue as well. The San Jose Sharks lost to the Detroit Red Wings, the worst team in the league last night. They got shut out. They're having trouble scoring goals. There's no doubt about that. And it really looks like there's no hope of the Sharks making the playoffs. Like, if you watched them play last night against the Red Wings, you would have thought, wow, this is not the team that we've seen over the last few years. That's a contending team. And, at the heart of the issue, in my opinion, is the fact that they have $26 million, $26.5 million tied up in three defensemen. They've got Burns, they've got Carlson, they got Vlasic. That's 30% of their payroll. They don't have enough scoring now after, being an offensive team for so long, and they're having trouble scoring goals. And, I think we're starting to see age finally catching up with Joe, Thornton, but, Patrick Marleau, they brought him in, but, I just don't know. This team looks like it's in trouble because I don't see that they're going to do anything now, and I think their future is damaged. This is a team that owes their first round pick to the Ottawa Senators in the Erik Karlsson trade.
Yeah.
So if they fall out and let's say they win the lottery, they don't get the benefit of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, your thoughts on where this team is at and what you would do if you were the king of the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I've always been concerned about that team over some success. I just think there's something missing there. Now they've made the coaching change. Pete DeBoer goes out. Bob Boughner comes in. Their comments, even Boughner is saying how they're trying to create an identity. And now he wants them to become a better defensive team, grind it out a little bit more. And he's trying to get Brent Burns to play better defensively. But like you had just stated, so you go out and get two of the most prolific offensive defensemen in the game today in Karlsson and Burns. And Vlasic's just an all-around great defenseman, I think. And now you want to say that your team is a grinded-out team. Well, Karlsson is not a grinded-out player. Burns is not a grinded-out player. You've got so much of your cap space and so much your, when you go into a game, those are guys that they're going to get a lot of minutes. And to now say, okay, we're going to grind it out, and you've got those talented offensive players, those two things just don't mix. Like to my mind, you're not going to get value out of Burns and Karlsson by trying to get them to be grinded out players. They're race cars. You got to put the gas pedal right to the floor and drive it as hard as you can. You can't, they're a tractor driving around the field. They're race cars. They got to go. I just don't. Like, to me, is if you're trying to change the identity and get to be this grinded out team, and you've got particularly those two guys on the team, it just doesn't work. I don't think so. That is a confusing one. And that's a great point by you too. So now you say, okay, well, let's say the season's a wash. We're just not going to work. And let's go get a lottery pick. And then you don't get the lottery pick. It goes to Ottawa. So I just, Doug Wilson, I totally admire, like, as a former player, the general manager there, but you kind of wonder at some point, do they say, man, it just hasn't worked. I mean, there's been some limited success, but now they're really in a tough spot right now, just not now, but in the future too. So that's a tough one.
I think it's hard for good general managers, and I considered Doug Wilson, to be a very good general manager. I think it's hard for them to ever.
Kevin, why do you think Doug Wilson's a good general manager?
He's kept them in the race. Like, no one's paid much attention to this, but he's never really been, until recent years, allowed to go to the cap. He's kept them competitive, throughout the. For a very long time. Like, they've been a contending team now for what, a decade or longer.
But do you really think they've been a contending team? Like, I've just never got the feeling. I know there's the one year they went to the finals, but I just never got the feeling that I just watching it play like this team's ready to win. Like you watch, I mean, obviously the teams have won, but you watch the Boston Bruins. Okay, that team's ready to win. Washington's ready to win.
Yeah,
I don't think if I've got that feeling with San Jose.
Well, I mean, they've been in the mix. I mean, they have always been, a team like we don't come into the season. We haven't come into the season saying, well, the Sharks are in contention to be the worst team in the league. Like they're always considered to be an upper division team.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure ownership in San Jose has been pretty happy with Doug through the years because, he's always been a little bit below the cap line. He's been careful with his money until recent years. And now he's been aggressive and now they've gotten themselves in a little bit of trouble. But the point I just wanted to make is when you've had a team that's been contending for a long time, like the Sharks have, I think it's hard for those guys, and we saw it in Detroit with Ken Holland, they don't go quick enough into the rebuild mode. Right. Like, the Red Wings hung on too long, and it made the rebuild harder. And I think we're in the same situation in San Jose. Yeah. Where, now saying that, if you look at it, Doug has tried to, kind of change it up on the fly. We've had the infusion that, Timo Meier has played a more prominent role. In fact, to me, he's been a little disappointing this year, but he's kind of changed up the leadership group there. Hurdle has gotten an expanded look as well.
And that's a good point, though. Everybody talks about Pavelski being such a great leader, and they'd let him go. I mean, is that a mistake? I mean, it looks like a mistake now. It's easy to say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that I mean, it does look like a mistake, to me. Their offense hasn't been the same, to be sure. I think this team is in trouble. I don't know what Joe Thornton has left. I think he's got 15 points. So he's got a goal and 14 assists. Like it might be time for Joe Thornton to just say, "Hey, trade me. Let me take one last shot somewhere with a contending team." Yep. Because any team would love to have Joe Thornton hanging around playing on their fourth line. Yep. One of the greatest passes. Even Patrick Marleau, who can still skate, has 7 goals in 37 games. He could help the secondary scoring for some team as well. But they don't have a lot of pieces they can trade off. Like you're kind of stuck on that defense. You're not trading those 3 guys. You're not trading Erik Karlsson at $11 million.
I could see them trading Burns. That's the guy I could see that could trade. Like I think he's got more of an upside than Karlsson does. I think Karlsson's just that guy that's like, oh man, I don't want that contract.
Yeah, I mean you'd have to trade him in the offseason, though. I guess would be my point. I think it'd be harder to move Karlsson because $11 million is hard for a lot of teams to fit in. But is Burns at $8 million?
Who else would want Erik Karlsson $11 million off season or during season?
No, I think he'd be hard to move for sure. You'd have to eat some salary, but I think you can move Burns. I agree with you in the off season. Because there's some big bear intimidation still with him as well. And you can decide. Although, and this is always the great argument: can you rebuild without stripping it down to the chassis? Can you, like the Los Angeles Kings are now trying to do with Drew Doughty and Kopitar? They're committed to those guys long term, and they're trying to rebuild that team around those guys. And I think that's much trickier than when you just say, all right, everybody out of the pool, and we're going to start over again. So I
agree. It really depends who those veteran guys are. We've talked about Boston so much with Patrice Bergeron and Chara. Like, to me, that's a unique situation. We've got two older players that they're total professionals, keep themselves in great shape. The way they play, the way they lead, they're the kind of guys you want to keep. And I'm not trying to knock Kopitar, or Joe Thornton or Marleau, but they're not Chara and they're not Patrice Bergeron. So I'm with you. That's a tough one in San Jose where I don't think anybody's taking Karlsson. I would trade Brent Burns, and I would try to trade Brent Burns now during the season. I mean, there's probably a few teams that would say, absolutely, I'll take Brent Burns. They're really contenders, right? I mean, that offensive jolt from the blue line, and even Vlasic. I mean, you're not going to win. But I think it's some other issues there too. Like I'm not a big Evander Kane guy. I know he's a talented player, but I question the attitude sometimes. So just a lot of issues there at San Jose.
Yeah, I'm just looking now at the Sharks and their season by season. They in the last decade, they've missed the playoffs only once, and they won 11 playoff rounds. Yeah, that's a successful team. Now they didn't win it, and so you can say, well, I mean that's the ultimate prize. But they've been there. They've been successful even in the post.
Is that what you want though? You just want to be there?
Yeah. Like but before you can win, you got to be there. You don't think they have anything to be proud of? The fact that they've for 11 years been in contention. I'd say if you've won 11 playoff rounds, let me make sure I got this right. So
that's 10 years, 11 playoff rounds, right?
So they won 2, 4. They've been in the conference finals 4 times. Right. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 11 playoff rounds in since 2000, and we haven't done this year. So it's 11 playoffs in 9 seasons.
9
and
seasons.
They've been in the conference. Yeah, and they've only one time in that time did they lose in the first round. Two times they lost. Right. In the first round.
Again, I hear you with the numbers there. It's just that when I watch that team, I say to myself, I know they went to the finals one year, but I'm saying to myself, do I really think that team was that close? Like, do I really think that they were that team that was going to win? Like, again, I look at Boston, I look at Washington, I look at St. Louis now. They're set up to not just win the one time that they to win. They're set up to be a real contender for many years to come. I just don't have that feeling with the San Jose.
Well, I mean, I get that, but I think, you're talking about 3 teams, so does that mean if those are the 3 teams you have this feeling about, does that mean the other 28 teams in the league, you don't have any respect for? Is that how it goes?
You got me on that one. That was nice the way you did that. You just reeled me in there, set me up, just slammed me like that was like from.
Well, I understand your point. What you're saying is there's 3 teams that you look at them and they're primed and they got a real good shot at winning, and I understand that. I'm just saying I don't think we can measure success about that with the 10% of the top 10%. I mean, I think there are going to be other teams that have been close, but not close enough.
You go back, and that's a very good point. But you go back, LA had that. LA was in that group, 6, 7, 8 years ago, right? Chicago was in that group.
But they weren't in that group until they were. It's not like we watched them for 5 years and said, oh man, like they're knocking at the door, they're right there. Suddenly they were there, and then all of a sudden, they were good for a few years. Right. And of those teams, Chicago held it together longest. Like, LA won it twice. Chicago won 3 times in 6 years. Boston got back there, but it wasn't right away. They had the success with Thomas, and then it took some time to get back. But I mean, your point is well taken. I look at the 3 teams you mentioned, and all those they feel like they know what they're doing. They know what it takes. Right. I like the fact they make changes. Washington made a bold move in the offseason, trading Niskanen, and they're right back where they are. And I think they think they're better than they were.
Right. And I joke around about Barry Trotz and your love affair with him and everything like that. Yeah. Your family kinship there. But that was a bold move too. I mean, you've just won the Stanley Cup, and you're finally talking there. Now you let him go. So you're
and I think Lou Lamoriello knows what he's doing as well. Like, you look at their goalies this season, and I thought it was in fact, I picked against the Islanders because I thought it was I didn't understand the move. I thought Robin Leonard played well. I assumed that the team had a lot of confidence in him, and I think what Lamoriello and Trotz decided is it's the system.
Yes. And,
Leonard's a good goalie, but we can put another goalie in here. And if you look at their goalie stats in the Long Island, they're very similar. No matter who they have in there, they perform as well. But anyway, let's move off the Sharks here. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking more about them as the season. But I want to talk about the Penguins again, because I think back on this now, and you've been associated with that division for such long because you played with it, but doesn't it seem like the Penguins have way more than their fair share of injuries and illnesses and odd happenings? And here we go again. The Penguins, Malkin's out, then he comes back. Crosby's out, still out, getting close. They had Letang out earlier. They had Rust out earlier. They had just so many guys out earlier. And now Jake Guentzel. Like, I watched that play now multiple times. And, he scores that goal. And, yeah, I mean, was it, did you cringe a little bit when he went in? But did you feel like he was going to be out 4 to 6 months when you saw that?
No, not at all. No, but that is a scary one, yeah. But I'm with you with Pittsburgh. It is that special organization in good and bad ways, right? All the illnesses, like you mentioned, Lemieux, Letang, their illnesses, and like Crosby to be that star player to be hurt so many times. I saw a statistic too over the last decade. The leading point total was Patrick Kane, I think, had the most points over the last decade. Somebody reported, but Crosby, despite all the time that he had missed, he was right behind him. I think in second place. So that says a lot about how great he is too. Yeah, it's one of those teams. Like Detroit was like that for so long too, where it's just they find a way to get it done. You got to give the coaching staff a lot of credit there. Sullivan, that. It's that next man up mentality. It's interesting watching the football playoffs too, is with Philadelphia Eagles. It's the same kind of thing when they're winning, and it's just they're decimated with injuries, but they've got that system in place. And I think we've talked about that a lot. Where when you build that culture in an organization, whether it's the New England Patriots or now Philadelphia is doing it, or like we talk about Boston doing it, Washington's built the culture now, and obviously Pittsburgh has built that culture where it's just and you're talking about Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello with the Islanders too. They lose John Tavares. They let Leonard go. It's almost like they're saying it doesn't matter who's there as long as you're a capable player. We have a culture in place, and Pittsburgh has that, and we can be successful just by plugging in players. Obviously, you have to have good enough players, and you have to develop those players in the minors. But I just it is. It's almost like the bad things that have happened to them have helped them become the organization they are right now. So,
well, let's. Look, and this stuns me actually because Crosby is such an incredible player, but the Penguins have been 14-5-3 without him. Like that, that's amazing.
You don't need him. He's not that good.
Pardon me?
He's not that good. You don't need him.
Yeah, I guess not. I guess you don't need him. Although, here's the interesting thought. I had to do, just before leaving USA Today, we did our player of the decade. And, to me, I didn't even have to look up statistics. I knew it would come down to Ovechkin versus Crosby. Yeah. And, normally I'm pretty well known as a Crosby guy. Like I've known him since he was 16 years old. I went up to Rimouski, did a big story on him. I just love how he plays the game. I think he never, there's in this social media world, there's just too many haters out there for him. Like I think he does everything, the right way. But in the end, I took Ovechkin, and the reason I did, I pushed the button Ovechkin, and it's funny. I just had this discussion with Craig Custance of The Athletic. I was on his podcast, and he was doing the same thing, and he basically said, yeah, it was like they were 1A and 1B. They were right. Like it just seemed whoever you took, you were both right and wrong. But here was my thought on it. And that is that Ovechkin in this last decade has done something that we said was impossible. Look, Crosby won the back-to-back cups. He's been incredible. He's overcome numerous injuries. He's a great leader. He should be in the Selke. Ovechkin finally got the cup. He converted himself into being the type of player that you need to win. He set a new standard for celebration of a cup. But here's why I took him. We said nobody could catch Wayne Gretzky in the thing. And now we're saying maybe Ovechkin can do it. He has been so incredible. His numbers, scoring 50 goals so many times, that now he is in a position, as hard as this is to believe, that he might be able to surpass Wayne Gretzky, who just seemed like, his goal number of goals, 894. I think it's 894.
Yeah.
You'd never be able to take that down. And I just thought for that reason, I went with Ovechkin, but I'm totally fine with someone who believes Crosby.
I guess, you know what, and it's an excellent point, but I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years here, he has really taken his game to a whole new level.
Yeah.
I guess my argument against it would be that, if you're looking at the whole decade, Crosby to me had a whole decade. I thought it'd be much more of a dominant player.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the last 3 or 4 years really that Ovechkin kind of figured out the game, how to win. And what I've always liked about Ovechkin is that he's always wanted to be that difference maker. I just don't think he knew how to do it. Like his difference was like running 100 feet across the rink and running somebody through the boards. He wanted to make that big play all the time. I think now he's realized that, yes, you can still make the big plays, score the big goals, but he knows how to make the smaller little plays too, to be that complete player. So, yeah, I mean, you can't argue about where he's at right now, but to me, over the last decade, that if you have to argue it some way, I think it's that Crosby has been a much more consistent player, even with all his injuries. So.
I totally agree with you on that. Although I would say that that Crosby has been the far more consistent player. But the gaudiness of Ovechkin's goal scoring numbers at a time when everybody talked about how hard it is to score a goal is another reason why I went with him. I mean, he just kept getting 50 plus goals at an era when it was hard to get 30. Yeah. And he was getting 50 plus. So I'm fine about it. Like if I did it again next week, I'd probably go with Crosby. I mean, like it's I just think it's it's like trying to say who's better, Wayne Gretzky or Gordie Howe.
Yeah, that's good. The great thing I like about Ovechkin too, where it's like everybody knows, like on that power play, he's going to shoot the one-timer. They know where he's going to stand, how he's going to shoot it. Goalie knows, all the defense knows, but he still does it, right? It reminds me so much. You mentioned Gretzky. Gretzky and Curry were the same way. Where I prided myself on being this great penalty killer. I knew where they're going to, especially once I got traded to LA. We played against Edmonton more often, and I thought, I'm not going to let that happen. But you block it off like you think you've got it blocked. Well, Curry will just go a little bit further away, or Wayne will saucer pass over your stick. So you think you've got the play covered, but they always find a way to get it done. And that's the same thing with Ovechkin. So he is in that category of those great players. Mike Bossy was like that too. He'd always find a way to score goals. You're hammering, you're cross-checking in the back, or whatever. You doing anything you can. He would always find a way to score goals. So there's no question Ovechkin's in that category. Yeah.
I was watching hockey the other day, and somebody pointed out, I wish I could remember where I heard it at, but anyway, they that the analytics people, and I'm just going to trust this guy at its word because I didn't look this up, but one of the broadcasters said that according to the analytics, that the real time to pull a goalie, if you're 2 goals down, is 9 minutes to go. And I heard that, and I just went like, wow. Can you imagine how this game would be altered if that's the way coaches did think, that if you were down by 2 with 9 minutes left, you pulled the goalie? Now, we're getting there. I mean, they're pushing it back all the time. I saw, Blashill in Detroit pulled the goalie, and he got I wish I could remember, but it seems like it was 5 or 6 minutes to go, and he got a goal. And then, he put the goalie back in, and then he brought him out at a more appropriate time. But how do you feel about that? The idea that with 9 minutes to go, if you're down by 2 goals, you'd pull your goalie.
Wow. Man, that's a tough one for me. I guess I like the attitude that you're saying to the team. You're saying, we're going to do whatever it takes to win here. Coaches are always saying, well, it doesn't matter if you lose by 2 goals or 3 goals. And I guess that's the case there, right? If you pull the goaltender and you're down by 2 goals and they score another one on you, so now you're down by 3. Well, what's the difference? You're still going to lose the game. At least you're showing that to me, there's so many factors that go into it too. Who do you have on your team? To me, the teams that can't score goals as well, like let's say the Detroit Red Wings aren't that really a stacked team offensively. Do you think that your team is, obviously the coach did, but do you think that your team has now got a much better chance of scoring now? Or do you, if you're obviously the Washington Capitals or the Nashville Predators or Tampa, people that got a little bit more offense. See, I'm more likely to pull them early now then because I know I've got more offensive weapons at hand. I think there's so many factors that go into it there. Who's really hot, who's playing well on your team, what's the ice conditions, is it a third game in 4 nights, are you tired? I just think there's a lot of factors that go into it. You got to go into it, but it's interesting. So what was the numbers on pulling the goalie at 1 goal? What was the time?
He didn't bring that up, so I don't know. I'm going to actually investigate that a little bit, because that might be fun to talk about in a podcast, just about the psychology of that, and how the players feel about it and all that kind of stuff. But my final subject is, I want to get your take on what the True Grit lifestyle says about New Year's Eve. Now, did you party until 12:10 and then got up at 3:30? What do you do in the True Grit lifestyle?
Well, so the key is there. Now, this is another Herb Brooks saying, which may come as a surprise to you. If you're going to fly with the Eagles at night, you must be able to wallow with the pigs in the morning. Meaning, if you're going to go out and have fun, whatever it is you're doing, it doesn't have to include adult beverages, but if it does, if you're staying up late, whatever it is, True Grit life is about going all out all the time. So if your decision is to go out, stay up till 12:30, 1 o'clock, but your routine, your process is to get up at 3:30, you cannot change that process because of what you've done the night before. You're going to fly with the Eagles at night. You're going to wallow with the pigs in the morning. So I myself made sure that I had fun last night. Some tequila was involved in that process. But at 3:30, the alarm went off. The bed was made perfect. We're out the door before 4 o'clock for the march. So it wasn't always pleasant, but we have to get it done no matter what.
So when you want to dance, you're willing to pay the band.
Yes. Oh, yep. I think it all comes from growing up on the farm. My father and grandfather did not matter what had gone on. If you're having fun or if you feel sick, whatever, we had a dairy farm. Those cows had to be milked every day. So that's where it all comes from. The cows were milked every day.
And you got those cows milked this morning, did you?
They were milked.
All right. Well, Happy New Year to all of our viewers for this. I should have started out the podcast with that, but then Happy New Year to you, Tom, and looking forward to a great 2020.
Absolutely. Good job. See you next week, guys.